wake up today and before I even get the chance to watch the Darling episode, I see plastered everywhere that yet again there will be no new Darling episode next week. Are you kidding me, Nishigori? Are you kidding me? You do this again right as we're entering the final act? I can't take this kind of abuse any further. On a more serious note, I'm thinking about making another special Darling video akin to the manga comparisons one or the opening to analysis, where I just cover a separate topic on Darling and the Franxx, but I don't have any burning ideas, so I'd really be interested to hear what kind of video you guys would want to see. Let me know in the comments and I'll definitely take it into consideration for next week's Darling video. Hello everybody, I am PhenomSage and welcome back to another Darling in the Franxx episode review. Today we are going to be talking about episode 19, Inhumanity. And I know a lot of you guys will be happy because we are finally getting into the exposition and answers that we needed to explain some of the long-held mysteries of the series. And I'm of two minds on this episode. On one hand, I loved everything we were exploring, both in the present and especially in the past. This alternate future, civilization advancing differently, seeing what led to all of the events of now, I dig all of it so much. But on the other hand, everything that took place in this episode I feel like would have had more impact if it was expanded upon and maybe stretched over 2 episodes instead of 1. Because a lot of what took place did feel like they were rushing to cover plot threads and cover everything they needed to in such a short amount of time, instead of really letting us acquaint ourselves with this past and backstory. Probably the most criminal example of this is Dr. Franxx's partner and wife offering to test out the Franxx. She does so considering she still has her reproductive organs, unlike most people in this day and age, and well, she dies. And I'm sure everyone saw that coming, but just because I saw it coming doesn't mean it couldn't have been more impactful. It feels like the creators decided it just wasn't important enough and skimmed past it, causing it to feel really rushed and disjointed. It's funny because I would consider that a pretty important event that led to Dr. Franxx's loss of humanity to begin with, and the character that he is now. It could have been a very emotional scene if it was built up enough. And if I were directing the show myself, I probably would have made everything leading up to that moment a separate episode by itself, and end on her dying to really draw out the emotion. That's not my only example though, it's just frustrating because this entire fictional world that they've created, the concept of immortality becoming a common practice in civilization, that is ridiculously cool to me, and where we got exposition for these things from Dr. Franxx, how classes were divided even further and the population growth led to insane taxes on childbirth, I would have rather just seen it myself than to hear the doctor explain everything about what life was like. Even with what little we got of Karina, her and the doctor had a fun dynamic that I thought was showcased well in the brief dinner scene. Again, I would have liked to see them interact and go about their life more than we did. And that goes double for Dr. Franxx's life especially. Him trotting the globe to research the Klaxosaurs and continue his research sounds awesome, and you can tell, like a lot of elements in this show, that there was heavy inspiration from Evangelion. There's just something really cool about seeing a society undergoing change and entering a darker age, or in this case, just straight up entering the post-apocalypse. Anyways, basically what I'm trying to say is that the entire backstory was so cool, I just would have liked to see it spread out more. And judging by the way this episode ends, with questions still left unanswered, I would guess that we'll have a bit more to this flashback as well in the future. But when I say I want more of this backstory, I mean I want more of this episode's backstory, the beginning of the end. Moving on from that, like I said at the beginning though, it being a flashback episode, we do get quite a bit of light shed on the entire situation regarding the state of the world and how civilization ended up like this. One of the most interesting details to me though was APE itself and their involvement in moving this world into a new age, introducing magma energy which eventually led to immortality. For one, we hear that there are basically basically no details about APE, where they came from, or who they are. Which for one, I'll tell you right now that as a global organization that eventually held control over the government and economy, someone would get suspicious of that eventually and reputation would be brought into question. Anyways, ignoring that, elaborating that these people have no origin only reinforces the theory I posed last week, that the APE members maybe are just straight up aliens who came to this world seeking something more. It does make you wonder what they're after if immortality is already something that every commoner on the street has. But speaking of immortality, this also raises some questions. Why are the adults so old if they've gained immortal bodies? And why do they need magma-powered hearts to stay alive? Could it be an imperfect version of immortality? What I also find interesting is that it's implied that Dr. Franxx never went through the immortality injection himself, claiming that he doesn't like the idea of them messing with his body, which is pretty ironic considering the state he's in now, but we'll go with it. For all the answers that we did get though, there were many that we didn't get as well. For one, they delve briefly into the creation of parasites to be in charge of protecting the adults, who have seemingly forgotten about any kind of war at all due to the tranquil and tedious lives that they live. But we never really go all in learning about the parasites and what the true nature of them are. Why are we aging rapidly and just how are we created? It is implied near the beginning of the episode and even at the end that due to the doctor's illegal experimentation with cloning, that he's using this knowledge to create parasites, but it's never really fully explained. Is it intentional then that these clone children's age rapidly accelerates once they reach a certain point? Or is that an imperfection in the clones? And if so, why haven't Nana and Hachi, who are clearly shown to be parasites, not aged themselves? So many questions, so little time. Speaking of cloning, it's time to talk about the big revelation of the episode, the one that everyone will be focusing on. 02 is the clone of the Klaxosaur princess. As soon as APE told Franxx to recover a DNA sample from the princess, I knew it was set in stone. And it's here where a lot of the jargon APE have been speaking starts to make sense. The stuff about 2 keys, replacement keys, etc., should start to make more sense now. But here's what I gather from it. APE needed the Klaxosaur princess as a key to open the Grand Crevice, or at the very least do something with it that will allow them to realize their desires. But instead, they ordered the doctor to get some of the Klaxosaur princess's DNA in order to create a clone, someone that they can use as a replacement key, in this case 02. Again, what being a key means, and if this is what the show is alluding to with all of the 02 death flags, I don't know, but I like that stuff is starting to come together now. On the topic of coming together, there were some really nice callbacks in this episode relating both to 02 and Dr. Franxx. For one, I like the line that the doctor says when he first sees this Klaxosaur corpse. The body's composition could be called both mechanical and organic, and it struck me as extremely beautiful. The Klaxosaurs and how they live strikes the doctor as extremely beautiful, which, as you may remember, is paralleled with 02's opening lines in episode 1, where she comments on how the Gien's way of life strikes her as profoundly beautiful. And of course they call back to that again at the end of episode 15. And I know what you're thinking, she says profoundly beautiful instead of extremely beautiful, callback ruined. But I'm pretty sure Franxx says the same word in Japanese that 02 does, and that's more of a translation difference than anything else. Another callback I liked is when Hiro exits the elevator and sees 02 sitting down. He stares at her horns again and she calls him a pervert. Exactly the same shenanigans that happened in episode 3. I just love little details like this. You guys know that I've appreciated and called out every single detail like this that I've seen throughout the series. Anyways, one interesting thing to note about the Dr. Franxx Klaxosaur scene is that he observes that the Klaxosaur has the same 2 X chromosomes that human women do. What this means, again, I could not tell you, but I have a sneaking suspicion that it will be important in the future, maybe even relating to figuring out where these Klaxosaurs came from. Maybe that has to do with the human cores that they found inside. Speaking of the doctor, of course we see how he lost his arm, bitten off by the Klaxosaur princess, which on the bright side, at least he seemed to enjoy it. But again, like I said, there are still things left unanswered that lead me to think we're getting a continuation to this flashback. Not only is there a bit more to show regarding Zero Two's upbringing, at least the stuff that we didn't see in episode 13, but also we never see the Doctor lose the right side of his face and replace it with a metal half. And he says in the flashback that he's wanted to replace his body with metal anyways, but I'm guessing there has to be more to it than that. How did that happen to his face? Focusing on the present time now, I have to give credit where credit is due. Futoshi stepped up more than I thought he would, and he's not only demanding that Kokoro and Mitsuru go back to piloting together, but he also loses it at APE for not even apologizing for wiping their memories. I'm really glad that the joke I made last episode about Futoshi just going with the fact that he and Kokoro are teamed up again didn't actually end up happening. And he really is sticking with his resolve, which ends up making him more likable as a character. On the topic of Kokoro and Mitsuru though, the show is really trying to sell the idea that they won't ever be recovering their memories. Even going so far as to break my heart and hear Mitsuru say, "I don't think I'd ever form those kinds of feelings for you." Oh god, that hurts. While I still firmly believe that they will recover their memories, or at the very least rediscover their feelings for one another, it looks like it is going to be more difficult than I thought, since they actually had fake memories implanted inside of them, as opposed to Hiro and Zero Two, who, as far as we're told, kinda just had those memories taken out and not replaced with anything. I'm guessing that's what made it easier for them to recover their memories, whereas here, I'm not sure how they'll return. Either way, that leads us to the end of the episode where Hiro is determined to leave APE's jurisdiction and demands to be set free. For one, I'm not sure why he expected that to work, but two, it seemingly does. Papa says that after this mission is executed successfully, they can leave, which of course we know it won't be as simple as that. My guess would be they're probably only agreeing to get them to cooperate, since I assume this is the final mission that every parasite will take part in before APE finally accomplishes their goal. I'm guessing the rebellion will start mid-mission once Hiro and the others figure out what's going on, but we still have a decent amount of episodes left to cover a single arc, so I do wonder what kind of plot turns they have in mind. But that has been all from me for this Darling in the Franxx episode review. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, let me know what you thought of the episode down below, including thoughts on any of the speculation that I mentioned. And of course, like I said at the beginning, let me know what kind of special Darling video you'd like to see in between now and episode 20, which unfortunately we will have to wait 2 weeks for. If you enjoyed anything I had to say here, I would really appreciate it if you liked the video, and make sure to subscribe to see more of my content in the future. And of course, as usual, have a great day.